Are you able to see the background screen, Chrissy?
No.
Okay.
Your screen? No.
No. Oh, okay. So I'll need to start sharing that.
There we go.
Excellent. There we go. So we're just waiting for people to join in, and then we will get started on today's webinar, which is Matboard pricing and profit. So just as everyone is coming into the webinar, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Carol Graham, and I work for FrameReady Software. And with me today is Chrissy Jackson, who also works for FrameReady Software.
Hello, everyone.
Yay! It's so much nicer to do a training with someone else. And Chrissy's going to be looking after the questions that people have today and also running the polls as well. So once we have people signed in and we are ready to get started, hi Adele, yay. I can see people posting in there already. That's great. And I'm going to just, before we get started, go through some of the information that you need in case you haven't been to one of our webinars before. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will notice that there is a GoToWebinar logo over on the right there. Okay, and then just over below that is the microphone. And during this webinar, everyone will be muted. We are not able to unmute you, and you are not able to unmute yourself. However, there are other things that you can do. And you can wave or you can vote if we decide to have a poll or a question period with a show of hands. But the things that we're going to use the most are this little bubble down here with the question mark in it, where you can post questions. And I see people are already saying good morning and hello from Joe and Alan. That's great. And if you want to post a question in there at some point in time during the webinar, you can do that. If we don't get a chance to answer all of the questions, I usually try to put them into the email that follows the webinar. Underneath that, there is an icon that shows the handouts that we were going to be using, and you can download those handouts at any time that you want. Also, down below in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that we are recording this. Everyone will receive a recording of this webinar afterward. And there's a little information box. If you want to go to full screen mode, use those 4 arrows. And if somebody does come in and you have to exit out of the webinar, the exit button is down at the bottom. We know that your customers come first. So we're going to go back and get started now on the webinar. So I'm just going to close that. And I see that we have at least 22 people in already. So I'd like to get started on this Matboard pricing webinar. There we go. So I'm sure you can see the screen, and we're going to get started then. Excellent. So there are 4 different things that I want to be covering. I want to be talking about the cost, I want to talk about your markup, and I want to talk about set price and min price. Those are the 4 things that are going to determine your pricing on your Matboard. So the first thing that I want to take a look at is the cost. And we're going to be taking a look at where those costs are coming from. So I do have the FrameReady down here, and I'm just going to go down to FrameReady and open that up. When you are updating your vendors, of course, you need to go to the Update Vendor Pricing button. And when you click on that, you're going to see the list of vendors that need to be updated. And right in here, I'm going to talk about one in particular here. This is the Crescent Matboard update. And we noticed back in 2018 that there was a major change in the pricing on it. And I've left it in that current state, which is great because now we get to play with it. One of the things that you can do if you do not have the automatic process unattended update selected, then we can actually go in and take a look at the pricing and analyze it. If you do have it selected and the button is green, you can simply click on there and change it to no, and then it will change back to a gray button, which means that we can go in and analyze the pricing. So back in 2018, when Crescent modified their pricing, they made some changes. And if you click on the Analyze button at the top of the screen, not clicking Proceed, but clicking Analyze, you're going to see the information showing what the old price was back in 2018 and what the current price is right now. And one of the surprising things is that the prices actually went down. So this is good news for you. You are actually paying less for the Matboard. However, it also means that you're charging less for the Matboard too. And in some cases, you may not want to charge less for those mats. Now, if you're thinking, oh, darn, I never got a chance to print this out using the printer icon or saving it as a PDF, you will notice that on the right-hand side of the screen, there is the Crescent 2020 price changes in the handouts on the right-hand side of the box. So you can go ahead and download that if you are curious and you're wondering how much did the prices change. Also, if you were to scroll down at the bottom of this screen, it would tell you exactly how many Matboards had changed in price, and also on average, what was the amount that they changed. So there were 1,247 items that changed over the last 2 years, okay, and that the average change was about minus 22%. So as I said, good for you that you are getting a lower cost on that, but you may want to make changes in your pricing. And so we're going to take a look at that and see how can you make those changes. So we're going to go back to FrameReady now without having done that. And one of the things that I would do is I would say, let's go find a Matboard that you use that might be affected by this. And I'm going to select a Crescent mat. And what I've done is I've actually gone to the original mat that I had, and then I duplicated the mat. And that gave me the second item in this list. And one of them has the old pricing, okay, and I gave it a different name. And the other one has the new pricing. Now I want to see how much the price has changed or how much my retail prices have changed. And when I'm in the form view, there's a great button down here on the left-hand side that's titled Price Comparison. And when you click on Price Comparison, you can see the retail prices side by side. And that really helps me to see from 18 United inches, how much the price has changed, and for 32 by 40, 72 United inches, how much the price has changed. So it's a matter of saying, now how am I going to change these prices so that I can bring my prices back up to where they were? And if you don't remember anything else in the video, this is going to be really helpful. So if we go back to Crescent here, one of the things you can do is you can tweak them individually. And what I can do is say that I know that I want the prices to come up 25%. And I can do this manually by saying that I want to change the prices 25% by saying it's going to be 1.125 multiplied by the amount, that's the asterisk, and then go to each one of the other areas that I have here and say yes, and I want to also multiply this by 1.25, and then I also want to go in here and multiply this cost by asterisk 1.25. And then when I do that, you'll notice that the prices have changed over on the right-hand side. And if I go back to the price comparison screen, it's going to show me that the prices have changed and they're close to where I want them to be. The number is going to be dependent upon what your markups were at the time or what they are right now. But if I decide that this is definitely the markup that I want, I can go and apply this markup to say, I only want to affect the Crescent Matboard. I don't want to affect any of the other Matboards that are in my database. So you'll see that there's a tooltip. When I hold my mouse over top of the pricing options and defaults, and it says, let me just go back to that, it says press down on the Shift key. So I'm holding the Shift key down and I'm going to click once on that button. And what it does is it adds that default that I created down at the bottom of the screen with all my changes that I've made. And now I can say that I want to use this default specifically for Matboard and just for Crescent. And I'm going to take out the 32 by 40 so that it's only applying it to the Crescent Matboards. And of course, then I'm going to put a note in here saying that whatever the date is that I've made the change and how much I've increased it. And then I can apply it just to the Crescent Matboard. The other thing that you can do, and I'm going to go just back up to the top here and move that aside, what I want to do instead, let's say that I don't want to have to figure this all out and type in all of this information. And I would also recommend that you would use this so that at least once a year, if not every 6 months, you're going to come in and you're going to evaluate your pricing and say, what am I charging? How much are the vendors charging me? Is this enough profit for me? And you need to increase your profit. So you can't rely just on the vendor's wholesale cost over here to be the profit that you're going to make. And that if they've increased it 2 cents, then you're going to make that much more profit. Or if they've decreased it, you're going to make that much less profit, because you don't want to do that either. So one of the things that you can do, if you decide that I want to increase just this record or just one supplier, or I want to change all of my pricing, is to go up to the top of the screen and click on the word perform. And down here, you'll see adjust pricing by a percentage. And this dialog box that comes up is going to allow you to either increase or decrease, depending on what you need to do, by a specific percentage. So that if I decided I wanted all of them to come up 25%, I could do that for everything in the database, or if I found all the Crescent map boards, just for the Crescent map boards, or for all the map boards that I have. The only thing is that if I do this for the found set, for the Crescent map boards, that doesn't necessarily mean that the new map boards coming in are going to have that same markup applied to them, unless I go back into the pricing options and defaults and create a default for them. However, if I decide that I want to apply it just to this one record, so I'm going to process this, okay, and it's going to put the markup in on this one record, then once it's done that, I can go back into the pricing options and defaults, and again, pressing down on the tooltip and applying it. So that would help. The other thing that is going to be very helpful as well is that if you did find that you didn't want to have those prices affected right away, in the new version of FrameReady, you can click on the Options tab here and say, do not import a lower price if the item has dropped in cost. So you could apply that button and then run the update for Crescent, okay, and then come back in and deselect that afterwards. So that's another option for you when you're looking at your prices. Again, while we're talking about costs, the dollar amount over here on the left-hand side is the wholesale list price from the supplier. If you do receive a discount, you may want to enter it into the discount box to show what the true cost of your inventory is, if you're using FrameReady to track the inventory, which you can do. So that's another way of saying it. If you do decide that you wanted to use the foreign exchange button, possibly to decrease all of the wholesale costs, remember that that's giving your profit of purchasing wisely to the supplier. And there are times when you may want to do that. In some cases, you may say that I want to base my prices, on the lowest amount because I'm next to a discounter. And let's go take a look at how you decide what your markups are. So we discussed the cost a little bit. Now we want to take a look at the markups. And what I'm going to do, this is the other handout that's in there, and I'm just going to pull that up for you so that you can take a look at it. And there's a lot of information at the top of this handout. I'm not going to go through that with you, but it's great if you want to take a look at it a little later on. So one of the things that people think is that if I've got the dollar value from the supplier, there's my wholesale cost of $17.09. And what I do is I have variable markups here. So a 2 times markup, a 3, a 5, and an 11. So some people would say, well, I'm just going to do an 11 times markup on that, and that's going to increase the costs, the retail prices for me. But the problem is that it can make the retail price for the larger sizes so outrageously priced that they're out of the market, and yet at the same time it doesn't really affect the smaller sizes quite as much. So just having a straight markup that's really high is not going to give you the pricing that you want. And here's another way of looking at that same information, and I compare it to a teeter-totter, so that if we look at the teeter-totter and we have a 2 times markup, the incline is not as steep, and you can see that in the dark blue line up here. However, if we have an 11 times markup, you can see that the incline is very steep, and that's the gold bar up here. So your prices are going to be very high up here, but they aren't going to be, your retail prices for smaller sizes are not going to be that high. And so having one markup alone, a really high markup, is not necessarily the answer. And what we're going to look at to compensate for that is using the set price in FrameReady. And for those who haven't seen it, Vivian Kistler and Bob Mayfield came up with this really great book called Pricing Custom Framing. If you have a copy, it's a wonderful tool, has a lot of good information in it. If you don't, I'm sure that there's one on eBay someplace. And this is where we got the information for FrameReady's pricing. We started out with the cost times the markup plus the set price to get the retail price. And the set price is very similar to a fulcrum down at the bottom here. And if you raise the fulcrum, then that 2 times markup is going to go up or down depending on how much of the set price you've added. And the set price can be a variable as well. It doesn't have to be a fixed dollar amount. It could rise or fall with the wholesale cost of the mat. So we're going to go back in and take a look at that. In here, we're back on our Matboard, and we're going to be talking about the set price next. But before we go into the set price, I just want to also talk about the sliding scale versus the flat straight markup. FrameReady comes with a sliding scale, and you'll see that it starts out with a 4 times markup. And in order to read this, it's going to say, if this is the case, that the cost of the mat is less than $6, therefore mark it up 4 times. And it looks at the blue box on the left for the cost. And if that's not the case, it keeps going down. It says, is it less than 8? But more than 6? No. Is it more than 8 but less than 10? And more than 10 but less than 12? And it keeps going down until it finds the correct markup line that it's going to use, and it applies that to the Matboard. One of the things that I found over time is that the FrameReady default markups that we have in here stop at 44. Because back then when we were setting it up, the mats weren't going over that amount. But if you were to do a find in your, if you were to go, let's just do that right now. If we were to say, go find all of the current mats, because it really doesn't matter if I'm looking at the discontinued ones, all the Matboard, and let's just even say for the 32 by 40s and see how high the cost goes up. And if I click on the underlined word cost, it's going to sort them out. The ones at the top of the screen are pretty low. These are wholesale things. If we go down, we're going to be looking at maybe $7. But if I go down to the bottom of the list, you're going to see that there are some pretty amazing prices out there, wholesale costs for a Matboard. So you may not be wanting to mark this up at a 3 times amount, because you're going to make an exceptional profit just even having it at a 2 times markup. So that's why when I'm looking at any of these, I would want to extend the markups to go a little bit further down. And I haven't done it on that one, but let's go back to the defaults, because I'm pretty sure I did it on this one. So in my defaults, it's going to go down all the way to accommodate the Matboard that is over 200. Okay, so that's taking a look at the sliding scale. If you decide that you're going to use a straight markup, then all you would do is go ahead and put your markup in, and that would be your markup for that Matboard. That's the straight markup. And don't worry about thinking that, oh my goodness, I've wiped out all my pricing. It's okay to play with your pricing, because as long as you have your default, I can click on the button that says look up my default anytime, and it puts it right back to where the default was. And so that was the default that I had for Crescent Matboards with 32 by 40. So now if I go back to the set price, we're going to take a look at that. And just before we do that, I do want to turn it over to Chrissy to say there is a poll there on the right hand side, and if you want to run the poll before we take a look at the set price, and then also let me know if there are any questions that we have.
Yes. We'll start with the first one.
And do you want to, oh, there we go, there's our first poll. So yeah, just a curious question, which Matboard companies are you using?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the poll, while we're doing the poll, there is one question someone's asking, Emily's asking, who wrote that book that you were showing?
Ah, yes. Okay. So while you're answering that, that poll is going to show on your screen until you click a button on there. So go ahead and click on any of the buttons, select one or more of them that you are using. This book was written by Vivian Kistler and Bob Mayfield. It was distributed by Decor Magazine Company. And it is so old, the price on the back says $15. I have seen some on eBay occasionally. And maybe that's what I should also put into the email that goes out is the ISBN number for that book so that anybody who is looking for that book can get it. It is a good resource.
Yeah. Is there any
Excellent.
other questions quick while we're waiting for this poll to close? If there is, if you can just type it in the question box.
That's great. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do right after the poll too is take a look at the determining factors for your markup, things that you want to consider when you're deciding what your markup should be.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to close this poll now, and there are no other questions, so we can continue.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and the neat thing is that once you've submitted that poll, then it shows the results. Do you want to show the results for that poll, Chrissy? And yeah, just lets people know the map boards that are being used. And I can only put 5 of them in there, so my apologies to the other wonderful map board companies that we have out there. So really neat. Bainbridge and Crescent are neck and neck in this group. Okay, thank you, Chrissy. Excellent. So I'm just going to go down to my other little item that I have on here. Oops. There we go, your markups. There, we'll pop that up. So when you're deciding on what your markups should be, there's no one pricing structure that's going to fit right for everyone. FrameReady has a default markup system in there that is generic. And I know some people have said, hey, it's perfect for them, but other people have said, oh my gosh, there's no way that I could charge so little. And other people said that will never cover my costs at all. So it depends on whether you're on the East Coast or whether you're on the West Coast, if you're in a high-end neighborhood or if you're right next to a big box store. Also, do you promote yourself on quality or service or speed or price? All of those things do make a difference. Let's go down to the next one here. And where do you want to position yourself? You want to gather some competitive intelligence to find out if the other people in your area, what are they charging? And where do you want to position yourself once you know that? Do you want to be the most expensive one in town because you have the best quality and people are paying for it and they recognize that? Or do you want to be the one that is the lowest price in town? Or do you want to say, I don't want to be in the middle, I want to be just above the middle or just below the middle? So those are going to be some things that you should consider as well. I know when we first started selling FrameReady, we had a really low introductory price on it. And the problem was nobody believed it would be worth anything because the price was so low. So it wasn't until we actually raised our price that people started buying it. And I thought that was interesting. So what do you do that's uniquely about you? What are your customers willing to pay? And do you ever have anybody walk out? Because if nobody ever walks out and questions your pricing, then your prices are really affordable for the people that are walking through the door and they love it. Okay, so you might be able to increase the prices. I know somebody told us once that if you were to add $1 onto every frame that walked out the door, nobody's going to notice, and at the end of the year, you'll have enough money to reinvest back into your business, either to buy new equipment or take training, put a new sign up, you know, anything of those things. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're covering your cost, all of the costs that you have, your wages, your overhead, your rent, your electricity, utilities, and also that you make a profit. So those are the things that we want to make sure that you're covering when you're looking at your costs in FrameReady. So moving back in here, we want to take a look at the markups that we have. And then once you have the markups in there and you've got them the way you want, make sure, and this is so important, that you don't have a big gap, so that you don't want to say that this is going to be a 6 times markup and then it's going to go down to 3.85. And I'll show you what happens on this. And because I'm playing with this, I'm going to throw the price up there for a moment. So if this mat happened to be $5.99, okay, it's going to fall into the 6 times markup, which is modified by the 1.75 up here, the multiplier that I used. Okay, and so you can see the whole sheet is going to be costing us 49.20, sorry, retail for 49.24. So keep that number in mind, 49.24. I'm going to change the cost a little bit, and I'm going to have it go up to 601. All right, just a few pennies higher. And instead of having it retail for 49.24, it's now going to retail for 33.83. So the retail price is going to drop when the wholesale cost goes up because there's too much of a gap between the markups. So we want to make sure that the markup is relatively close so that the retail price doesn't jump so much. And now I better put the
Carol,
correct. Yes?
can I interrupt for a second? I just have someone saying that they can't hear us, and I want to make sure that others can hear us.
Ah, very good point. And maybe I was speaking too quietly. Is anybody else having difficulty hearing? I will definitely speak up a little bit louder. If everything is okay, then just let Chrissy know that it is okay. But if you are somebody who's having difficulty, you can turn up your volume. I can try turning up my volume as well a little bit, but I will definitely speak up a little louder to make sure that you can hear me okay. Okay, we're going to move on.
I can, so.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback. Okay, so once you're sure that you've got the markups that you want and you've tested them and you know what the cost of the Matboard is that you're covering and that you've taken a look at the retail price that you're selling it for, then you decide if that's enough of a markup for your area or not. The second factor, and I'm going to go back to that Matboard that I was playing with earlier as my test Matboard, because if I go back in here now, and I want to say that I'm going to take out the set price, because if I remove the set price in here and I'm only pricing based on the markup, you'll see that the smaller sizes in here are very, very low. Vivian Kistler always used to say you should have at least covered the cost of your Matboard by 16 by 20. And in that case, we haven't. And then what happens is whatever that Matboard is that you've ordered in, especially if it's a unique color, maybe Congo green or atomic orange, you now have that sitting in stock. You paid the extra $1 so that the customer could have this Matboard, and then someday, if it isn't faded, dented, scratched, torn, you'll be able to sell the rest of it and then maybe possibly make a profit on it. So we want to make sure that that isn't the case, that you are making a profit on this right away. And that's where the set price comes in. And in most cases, FrameReady will say whatever the cost is of the Matboard, we're going to divide it by 2. And that means that the customer automatically pays for half of the wholesale cost of the Matboard. And then whatever area they use, that area is being marked up by the multiplier. And that's what gives us this slow increase of retail prices on the right-hand side. Now, if this was a mat that, and actually I should go back, there's another report that I want you to take a look at. And this is the second report that I was talking about. The first one was the Analyze report. This report is the Matboard usage report. And the way to generate that report is from the main menu, the work order screen. You can go to the work order screen from the main menu, but I'm just going to go right to the work order screen. At the top of the screen, you'll see on the menu bar the word reports. And when you click there, you're going to get the molding and Matboard usage report. Now that report will run for all of the records that are in your found set. So down at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, I can see that there are one of 784 records. That's going to take a while to do that. Or if you are in the list view, you can see how many records are at the top of the screen. So you may want to use a date range and say, I want to go based on find all of the orders that were created from 2019 up to today. And if I just enter the 3 periods and leave it blank, it knows that it's going to be covering that up to today. And maybe I just want to know the ones that have been completed, or have been posted to the invoice. Whatever you decide, you can do that. And then once you've performed your find, you now have the list that you want to see. So you can either click on reports at the top of the screen and go to molding and Matboard usage report there, or if you're in the form view, looking at any one of these records On the left-hand side of the screen, there's a button that says Print Documents. And when you click on that, it too will show you the different reports for your found set. And this is the one, molding and matboard usage. And I really like coming to this screen because it's going to show me exactly how many mats are going to, and molding and work orders are going to be pulled up for this report. So I can see them right on the screen before I click on the report and run the report. Now I'm not going to run the report right now. I've actually got the report that's been run already, and I'm just going to show you the things that you might want to be looking for. This is going to give you your molding as well as your matboard for that time period. And it's great because you can run the report maybe for 1 year and then for the next year and see what the trends are. Is there certain molding that's always at the top of your list, or matboard that's there? This is going to tell you how often the matboard was used, what the total number of matboard used was, and is there a certain matboard that is your most popular matboard that maybe you should be buying that one in bulk because it's always in stock. And most people do have a go-to black mat, a go-to white mat that they keep in stock. But there may be some other colors, maybe university colors that you have that you want to keep working with, and you might want to buy that one in stock. So this is going to give you the report based on that time period to see how much that matboard is selling. The other thing you want to look for, and this is where the money is being lost, are those mats where you only have sold a quarter of a sheet of the matboard. And when you've sold a quarter of a sheet, that means that 3/4 of it is still in storage, available to sell. But if you haven't covered your costs when you sold that quarter of a sheet, then you haven't made a profit. And that list could be fairly long. So you want to make sure that you do that. The other thing you want to know is that if I have these in inventory, I want to make sure that when I need that mat again, I don't order it again. And that's another thing that we should take a look at, is the inventory tracking. But going back into FrameReady right now and saying we know that we want to cover our costs based on that quarter of a sheet. Okay, and if this was an unusual color on my matboard, then I'm still not covering the cost of the matboard on the 11 by 14 or the 9 by 12. And that's where the minimum price comes into play. And you know that you at least want to cover the cost of the matboard at that point. Now, this means that we've covered the cost, but you haven't made any profit on it. And I know some people are going to say, well, I'll wait and, if I sell the rest of it, then I'll make a profit. And I'm going to suggest you still have the labor involved in cutting that matboard. Somebody had to order the matboard, somebody had to receive it, somebody had to bring it in. So there's still labor involved. And we would recommend, or I would say, that if you wanted to put anywhere from +$2 to +$5 on there, the FrameReady default is +5. So when you get your program, that's the default that's in there. Anybody who's been using FrameReady for a while, there are different defaults in there now than there were when you first purchased the program, because we've been evaluating the markups and the costs and adding all these extra things in. There are several circles over here on the right-hand side of the screen. FrameReady will always be set to price the matboard by United Inch area. That is in favor of the framer. You'll notice that at 32 by 40, it's costing at $60.89. It's a small difference in the square inch, so it just dropped a few pennies. But it does drop a little bit, and of course, as the sizes go up, it would drop even more. So that's why we usually leave it set at United Inch area. So that's the minimum price, and as I said, you can set that up to be anything that you want. Once you have these and you know exactly what you want them to be, then you can go ahead and add them to your pricing options and defaults. Also under set price, the FrameReady default will have the word round in front of it. And what that does is it rounds it up to the nearest, and if I said that I wanted it to go to 1 decimal placeholder, it'll round it up to the nearest dime. Okay, another one that people sometimes use is ceiling, and that means it rounds it up to the nearest dollar. Oops, sorry, I can't have the 1 in there if I do that. There we go. So it rounds it up to the nearest dollar. And you can do that on the min price if you wanted it to be rounded up to the nearest dollar. So round or ceiling are 2 of the formulas that you could use in there. So that's covering the set price, and we took a look at the minimum price as well. so that if you want to set it up and add just that $1 on there right now, and just with that plus sign, you're going to have that little bit of extra money at the end of the year that you can use. Now, in addition to these three that I would always recommend that you would want to use in FrameReady for your defaults, there's another one called code, and code allows you to add on other variables that could be combined. In some cases, people actually use the code prices as the default rather than using a markup set price and min price. But the code means that you're going to have something that, and I'll go over to the code table and see if I've got one in there that's yeah, based on United Inches. So it's going to price it out based on the United Inches, so many dollars per United Inch. If you decide that you want to use the code table, and sometimes people want to do that simply because they have an old pricing chart and they've always done it this way. And if you do have an old pricing chart that you're trying to match up, definitely read that handout that I have in there on the Matboard pricing, because it's going to give you ideas on saying maybe you should rethink that pricing. But if you do decide that you want to do it, you can set it up in your defaults to have it based on code pricing. Anything less than 6 is going to use code AB. Anything less than 8 is going to use code AC. So you can set that up as well. The other thing that you can do in here, and I've got that a little further down, and let me just click on show defaults to just show the ones that I'm actually using in here. You'll see that I have a code table for Bainbridge, and I put in something called nothing over 32 by 40. It's very easy sometimes for people to price out a mat and they put the 32 by 40 mat in, and then when they're working with the design, suddenly the design goes over that size, and now they need to find the other mat, if there is available for that, an over 40 by 60 mat, or a different mat to select. So both of these code tables are set up to say, do not price anything over that. And if we go to, and actually if I put that onto, I'm just going to add that one onto my Matboard pricing here to show you what it looks like. So the minute that it gets to the 32 by 40, that pricing is outrageous and you know that you should not be using it. Now the question is, what does that code table look like? And if we go over to the left-hand side of the screen, it's a very simple code table that says anything that is 32 by 40, 72 United Inches, there's nothing added to the retail price. However, anything over 32 by 40, and then I've got the cap set at 200 by 200 for size, it adds on $9,999, which definitely gets your attention when you're pricing out that mat on the work order. And if we take a look to see what that looks like on the work order, now that I've added it in here, I can go to the work order and put that mat on there. And I'll just make up a new work order. And if we were to say that this is a vertical piece and we're just going to do a regular price, and we'll show you that it is going to generate a regular dollar amount right now. And because I've got my old one in there, it's using that. Okay, so we've got a retail price that's been generated. But now if I go up to 30.5 by 40, it should give me this horrible price that will get your attention, okay? And as well as the message saying oversized, check mat availability. And of course, if you flip over the back of the mat, there should be the oversized option that you can select and enter in. If there isn't, then you're going to select a different mat that will be available, or you're going to try and change the design that you're working with. Okay, so let's just go back to the price codes file and take a look. Ignore, there we go. Back into here, we've got the code table that we can set for nothing over 32 by 40. And if we wanted to also set up the one for nothing over over 40 by 60, it's going to look very similar to this one. And it's going to be just those two lines that says 40 by 60. There's nothing there. And then the 200, and then up to this number. If you decide that you want to make sure that people don't use a 32 by 40 mat for the 40 by 60 option, you can also add that in as well, and just put that same outrageous number in there, and then it's going to put it up on the top line here. Okay, so anything that's less than 32 by 40 is not going to be available, only the 40 by 60 is available. And it's completely up to you whether you want to do that or not. So let's go back to the other option in here. There's another code that is in your software that you may want to use, and I'm just going to go back and look at my default again here, and that is called a mat curve. In some of the new programs, it's in there already. And what I found was working with people, sometimes the sliding scale that, or the previous pricing that they had, went up a little bit in the middle here. And so what they wanted to do was just add a little bit extra onto the mats to bring the prices up in these sizes that they use the most. And there's a report that you can look at to find out what sizes you do use the most. And I might as well show that to you right now. Up in the top left-hand corner under the main menu, you'll see something called reports. And this can be used for the created mats or the completed mats. And I'm just going to go ahead with the created mats and just do everything from this year up till now. And it's going to give me a report that shows, and unfortunately, I don't believe I can make that any larger, sadly, but what it shows is a variety of items on the left-hand side. And this is from your work order file. If you selected the word artwork and changed it to whatever it is you're framing, then it's going to give you a list. And then I can look over here at the average number of United inches per order. And when I look at that, I'm going to find out that the smallest one I have is 22 United inches, and then the largest one is up in the 50s. So my pricing range that I'm looking at is anything between 22 and 50, and I'm going to focus around that area. Over here, it tells me the average is 44. Everyone has a different average. Everybody is different. I know in some cases they say the average for the industry is one amount, but I know some people do incredibly large size pieces because nobody else will handle them. And other people say no, majority of their pieces coming in are smaller. So if you decide that you want to add on a little bit of a curve in your sweet spot for the sizes that you need, you have something in here called mat curve. And if I scroll down here, so it's called mat up curve. I've got several of them in here. So the MC01, and I'm going to go over to the code tables to show you what it looks like. So it starts out at 23 at a 0, and then it goes up in very, very small increments. And I had to create an Excel chart in order to find out what were the exact increments without making the next one less than the one above it. And it goes all the way up to, I believe, 15 something dollars here on this one. But you can go in and tweak it and change it and add it. Now, the important thing is that when you decide that you want to add on that mat curve over here, once I've selected the code table takes precedence. It's now pricing it based on the code table, not on the markup set price and minimum price. So I'll go click reset. And then over here, I'm going to say combine the two items together. And then when I do that, it actually adds all of them together. So it has the minimum price, the code table, the set price, and the markup. Without that checkbox, okay, and if I take the minimum price off here, you'll see that it's just that little buffer zone that's been added in here. Okay, so if I add that in, okay, and then I put my minimum price back in there, okay, just at the cost at least. Now it's got the minimum plus the markup plus the set price plus the code. So this is entirely up to you how many of these things you want to use and how you want to use them. So I know that's a lot of information to digest, but that is the basic information from these 4 tabs. Chrissy, I believe we have another poll that we can do, and if there are any questions, I can answer those as well.
Yeah, I'll post the poll and then I'll let you know what those questions are.
Okay, excellent. So go ahead, we're trying to find out what the best day is for people to take the training. And we don't want to do Monday or Friday, but we're thinking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We've been told Thursdays are the best days so far, but we thought with the people that are here, maybe you can add in what day you think works best for you. And we will be.
For the questions.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have Adela would like to know, this report can be run from any work order for the molding and Matboard usage?
This report can be run for any Date range or any what?
For the molding and Matboard usage.
Yes. Yeah, so the molding and Matboard usage report is a combined report, and you can choose any time frame that you want for it. And it's going to pick up all of the work orders that were in your found set at that time. So if you decide that you just want to do a found set, whatever the found set is, that's what it's going to do. If you do just for one day, it'll run the report for that one day. If you did a find for all the work orders that were completed and have been posted to invoice, then it's going to give you a report just for those items. So it's great that you can run it for different variables and get the information.
Okay. I have Max would like to know where he can find the handout.
It's on the right-hand side of the screen. Underneath the bubble where you ask the question, there should be a small page, a little paper there that you can click on, and that will give you the two handouts that we have in this, the Matboard analysis report that comes from the main menu, and also the report or the handout for this session on Matboard pricing.
Okay, thank you. Emily would like to know, do you have to change the MC01 to be specific to your sweet spot?
I would suggest, yes, you probably do want to do that, but run the work order report first to see what your range is, and do it for a small date range, even if it was just for the beginning of the year till now, or do it from just for all of last year. You could do that time range as well and find it. Now, if you haven't changed, and I'll show you where that is, if you haven't changed the word artwork on the work order, then it's only going to give you one line, but at least it'll tell you what your average is for your average size. And yeah, I would want to change it a little bit. Because if yours wasn't peaking, if yours were all mostly larger sizes, then I would want to move that curve up a little bit, perhaps. But it might be a good starting spot, and like I said, go ahead and compare it with, create one record, duplicate it, put the curve onto the second record that you've duplicated, and go to the price comparison screen and compare them and see how much is this going to change my pricing. Is this too much? Is this too little? And then you make the decision on whether that's what you want to do. Okay, is the poll, can we close up the poll then, yeah. Chrissy?
Closing it, I'm going to share the results.
Thursday.
We didn't have any more questions, but Vicki says she's completely exhausted. She's been doing this so long, but her mind is just moving watching this.
Aw, there we go. I know it's a lot of information. The good news is that at the end of this, there will be a video that you can take back and watch again so that you can slow it down. Just go to the section that you want to apply and use that to set your pricing up the way you want. Okay, all right, so Thursday is good. Of course, we're asking the people on Thursday if Thursday's best for them. I know that, but that's still good information. Okay, there we go, and close the poll. Excellent. Also to mention too that at the end of this, there will be a survey that will come up, and we'd like you to fill out the survey afterwards, and that'll be sent back to us. The other thing that people like to do is that they like to use the golds pricing. And if you are inclined to do that, you can set that up as well. And very simple that it's the labor, and ignore the numbers that are over there. I've been playing with this again, but you could create the golds labor charge, and then that's what the code table is going to do. It's going to cover the labor for your Matboard cutting and working with your Matboards. Now, I do want to stay on this screen. I'm going to come back to the pricing options and defaults, but I mentioned that on the work order, there's a place that you can get better value out of that report by changing this word over here on the left-hand side. And normally, it will always say artwork, okay? And that's always what's there. But I would recommend that you want to add other items in here. It will not sort itself out alphabetically. You need to put the things that are important to you in there in alphabetical order, but add other items in there as well, because I know I've added in things like repairs or memorabilia, or people just purchased materials and that was it. So customize this list, and then when you run the report, it's going to give you better value to say, I find that these items are smaller, these items as a group are larger, and that'll give you your range that you're looking for. So let's just go quickly back to the price codes file, and we want to take a look at the pricing options and defaults. When you are in this screen, okay, click on the button in the top right corner to show just the defaults you are using. If you have, and you should have one record in here that is generic. It does not have anybody listed in as the supplier. And that means that all of the Matboard records have something to be priced by so that they aren't going to come up blank. If you don't have any records in here, if something happened, it's always going to apply the FrameReady default pricing to it, so you won't be stuck with nothing. And this is the default pricing that's up here at the top of the screen. As I said before, if you have changed your pricing, it's always a good idea to make little notes of it so that you know over the years, what have you changed? I've added on shipping now, I've increased 2%. And if you want to use those percentages at the top, you can do that, but you can also go through here and say that this pricing is just that little bit too low for me, and I want to change these items individually and change them, the numbers. And then once you've done that, just make a note to say that you've changed them. But now this new pricing would be applied to everything that I'm using. So you've got one record that is generic, that's for everyone, but then you can also have your specific supplier Matboard pricing. So that Matboard pricing would only be applied to that supplier. If you want, you can also specify that it's going to be just for the 32 by 40s or just for the 40 by 60s. And another thought, everybody prices differently. I know there's a gentleman who prices out the entire sheet of Matboard and that's it. And when pricing that, he doesn't really have a markup. It's going to be just the set price times 2 or times 3 or whatever the markup is. And then all the prices over on the right-hand side are exactly the same. And his theory that he works with is that if somebody wants the fallout or the rest of it, they pay for it, they can have it. Another option is that you could say all my 40 by 60s, I want them to be a flat rate amount, because if I'm going over a 32 by 40 and I'm going to be pricing out something that's just slightly smaller, I'm still using up the majority of the sheet. I really don't have that much that I can reuse unless there's the fallout that's being reused. Unless it's being cut into a bunch of little pieces, of course, but you may just want to do that same thing and just have a flat rate fee just for that item. The other thing is that it's surprising that there's a lot of Matboard that's coming out that are larger sizes now, 48 by 96. So you might want to take a look at how those are being priced so that on, if that markup is too high of what we have in here right now, because I was looking at one just recently and it's about $80 for that Matboard. And if you find that that markup's too high, you can create your own markup just for the 48 by 96 Matboards. And you know what, let's just go pull some of those up. So again, just finding for Matboard, 48 by 96, just the current ones, because those are the ones I want to look at. And there they are, sort them up by cost. There we go, least expensive one at the top, and it's actually a piece of foam core. But then down here we have the other mats. And then if you do decide that I just want to have some special pricing just for the 48 by 96 Matboards, regardless of who they come from, you can set that up as a generic pricing so that I can wipe out everything that's in here and say cost times whatever you want your markup to be, okay? Set price, you may not want to have a set price in there. Let's go back here. Sorry, I'm so used to molding. 2.5, there we go. The markup doesn't need to set, I have it identified whether it's cost, chop, or join. So it just has the markup, fill in the markup in the box, okay? Then go to the set price. If you don't need a set price in there or you're using that to cover your labor, go ahead. Minimum, maybe you don't need a minimum in there, you can leave it in there, it won't hurt anything. But then if you decide that I want this pricing to be applied to all of the 48 by 96 Matboards, then you're going to come back to the pricing options and defaults, press down on the shift key, click once on that button, and it's created that new record for you down at the bottom of the screen. Once you click on the default box, it automatically enters in the information. In this case, I would remove the supplier name because this is specifically for all the 48 by 96 mats. Put the date in there to say what you've done and also what the change was, that this is just for the 48 by 96 mats. Now, if you make a change in here, let's say we're going to go up to the top of the screen and we made a change to the pricing structure up here. Once you've made that change, the next thing that you need to do is you need to apply it to the group. If I click on apply to group, it automatically pulls in the information that it's going to apply it to all of my Matboard. Okay, any supplier, it doesn't matter, any dimensions. But there's also this other thing that I've added in saying omit these specific mats. These are the mats that are in stock. And that may be my go-to black mat, my go-to white mat, because I've taken out the minimum price on those go-to mats. And I don't want the minimum price applied to them. So when I get to this screen, the only thing I need to do is click on apply to the selected criteria. And the selected criteria is the information on the left-hand side of the screen. So that's where it's going to be applied. Once I apply this though, my generic formula to everything, that means that back here, the other formulas I have, it's also applied that one specifically to Peterborough. So now I need to come in and apply the changes to the Peterborough one. Once I've done Peterborough, then I need to go down and apply it to the Bainbridge and then the next one. So if you do have supplier specific mat boards and you change the generic one for everyone, this one will overwrite the others. If, however, I make a change just to this one for Bainbridge, then, and I click apply to group, then I don't need to apply the others, because this is only going to affect the Bainbridge mat boards that are 32 by 40. So once I click apply to group, then it's done. And it'll take a few minutes for it to run that formula. And when it's finished, it will bring you right back to the price code screen. Excellent. So that's a lot of information, I know, but thank goodness you'll have a video. There is a survey coming up. Chrissy, do you have any other questions that are on there?
Yes, I have two questions.
Okay.
Does the Matboard pricing take into consideration the fact that there is a front with a window and backboard?
A front with the window and backboard. Now, if on the work order screen, if I'm entering in the mat board, then the mounting board is listed down below, if that's what your question is asking. So, and the mounting, so the mat board here is assuming that this is going to have an opening cut into it. If I needed to put the same, and we covered this last week, but just to recap, if I need to put the mat board in here and there's not going to be an opening cut into it, then I'm going to go over to here and I'm going to put the mat board number directly into that field. Okay, it's going to price it out, and then I'm going to select the foam core that's going to go behind it. Okay, so there's my mat that doesn't have an opening cut in and my foam core. And some people get upset because, or concerned because this mat here is priced exactly the same as the one above it, which has an opening cut. And I know that there's labor in that one, but it's, you know, usually sometimes these small openings where you cut the mat is done, it's used. And the same thing here, you've used the full piece of mat board. So that amount of time for the labor, I would not worry about trying to deduct it from the mounting board. Hopefully that answers the question.
You mentioned barrier board.
Okay. And I would have to wonder about that. And I think that probably your barrier board, unless there's a specific number for it that came in from Bainbridge or Crescent, that those items are going to be listed under the mounting board. And I'm guessing on that one, I may have to find out more information about it. But that's most likely where I would be putting the mounting, the barrier board is under mounting.
Okay, I just have one more question and then we can wrap things up.
Okay.
How do you get to the percentage increase? It is not a drop down under perform on her program.
Okay, good question. You do need to be in level 3 or level 4 in order to see that. If you're in level 2 or level 1, you will not be able to make changes to the price codes file. So make sure that you are in level 3. And then when you go in here, At the top of the screen, it should have all the words file, edit, insert new, perform. And it's from the perform menu. Try re-logging in with either level 3 or level 4 in order to see that. And then click adjust prices by percentage. There we go. And if you do decide that you're going to increase everything, there are some notes here to tell you what things will be changed and what things will not. For any of our Canadian friends that are on here and you're using the vendor matrices, that is included. So, okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. There will be a survey that's going to be coming up at the end of the webinar. So I'm thanking you for your time, and do take a minute to fill out the survey if you can, if you don't mind. And we'll be sending you an email out sometime later. And thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.